Hello and welcome to this very special bonus edition of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. You can follow me at Chris Belcher24 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The show is at PBW Podcast on those platforms. Make sure you give us a follow, interact with us on social media. Let us know what you think about the build to WrestleMania. It is WrestleMania week. We are going to be on the ground in Dallas, bringing you all kinds of more content on our social media platforms. So make sure you give us feedback. Let us know what you want to see. If there's something specific that you want to see while we're there, let us know. We'll see what we can do. Again, my name is Chris Belcher. Joining me, as always, is the Young Buck and my riding partner for this coming weekend on our way to WrestleMania, Mr. Andy York. Andy, as everybody listens to this, we're just a few days away from WrestleMania.
Yeah.
It really snuck up on us.
It did. I was sitting back thinking a couple days ago, before recording this, I was sitting back thinking, I was like, man, like WrestleMania is almost here. And then I was like, yeah, it's only like 2 weeks away. And I was like, wait a minute. It's like at time of recording is like 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks away. And I'm
exactly,
it's blowing my mind. So, but I'm very excited for it. My first ever WrestleMania in person. And I'm ready for the bad moments. I'm ready for the amazing moments. I'm ready to take it all in at this point.
Listen, there's definitely going to be moments of WrestleMania that's going to let you down. It's just going to happen because that's the nature of a wrestling event. But man, when the lows are low, the highs are extremely high, and it's going to be a blast. As we saw on Raw last Monday, the glass shattering and Kevin Owens parody of Stone Cold Steve Austin, like the pop that Kevin Owens got with the glass shattering.
Oh my gosh.
Multiply that by 10 or 20, and that's what it's going to be this coming Saturday at WrestleMania.
And it's going to be actually Stone Cold. It's not going to be like a fake out. So it's not going to be like the cheers get high and then he comes out and then it's like, oh, but it's going to be like massive pop, pause, then he comes out, bigger pop. And so it's going to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So we're here to talk about all of it, man. There's been so many. We're talking about Austin. What a great moment that's going to be. There's been so many great moments and matches over the 37-year history, almost 38 years of WrestleMania. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to count down the greatest matches, moments. If you've got moments, that's fine. If it's just matches, that's great too. But we're going to count them all down. 10-1, our opinion, what we think is going to be, what we think is the best ever. And peek behind the curtain, full disclosure, if you're watching this on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel, you see what shirt I am wearing. So you can probably guess what's going to be at the top of my list. But if you're not watching and you're listening, then you'll just have to wait and find out. Anyway, before we get there, Andy, every top 10 list in the world has honorable mentions. So we, of course, have a couple honorable mentions. You being the Young Buck, and it's been fun on some of these old school episodes to look back on some things that you're not aware of.
Right.
So I'm anxious to see what comes up on your list. Give me an honorable mention or two that didn't quite crack your top 10.
Yeah, so I've actually gone back since like the WWE Network and Peacock and everything. I think at this point I've seen every WrestleMania all the way through.
That's
awesome.
Back
and watch. So
I'm so proud
of you. That was like the first thing I wanted to do was go back and watch all the WrestleMania moments and stuff that I've missed. And yeah, I've got 3 honorable mentions that just barely made it outside of my list. It was hard for me not to put WrestleMania 30 main event on the list. Not necessarily because of the match itself, which the match itself was pretty good, but the moment of just Daniel Bryan winning is special enough to be on a top 10 list like this by itself. So that one was just on the outside looking in.
Wow.
I also had Mick Foley and Edge on the outside looking in because I am a hardcore guy at heart, and so that match was like the epitome of like hardcore wrestling, which I loved. And then one that may like kind of shock you and surprise you. I've got Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat, because that match was like ahead of its time and was so good to go back and watch. I went back and watched it here a couple days ago preparing for this podcast, and I was like, maybe I was just living it up too much because I knew how good it was. I went back and watched it, and it still holds up today. So those are the 3 that are like on the outside looking in of my top 10 list.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I've always not necessarily thought Savage and Steamboat was overrated, because certainly it's not overrated. It just doesn't hit me like a bunch of other
Right.
WrestleMania's moments and matches do. Okay, I'll give you 3 honorable mentions on my end. I'm going to start with one that you're probably not going to be happy about. And that's going to be The Undertaker and Triple H from WrestleMania 27.
Wow.
That is outside of my list.
Okay.
Um,
I get
and
why. I understand why.
okay.
Because it is. Full disclosure, it is on my list, but I kind of cheated when I put these matches together,
Of course you
and
did.
we'll talk about because I think it fits better that way. But I see why.
I understand your feeling, and I get where you're going with that. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's one that didn't quite make my list. Another one that didn't quite make my list. I'm actually going to cheat and give you 4 honorable mentions.
that's fine.
Because I can't leave these other ones out. Another honorable mention for me is the triple threat match that started WrestleMania 34: Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, and The Miz. And I'm biased because I was in the building, but that was an incredible match, an
Yeah,
absolutely incredible match by probably the 3 best technicians and in-ring workers in WWE, aside from
yeah,
AJ Styles. These 3 guys, put them together, oh my gosh, it's magic. And then a third one is going to be Rock and Hogan from WrestleMania 18. Didn't quite crack my top 10, and I think it was just for the sheer fact that, I mean, the storytelling was great, the match was great, but if it had come a couple of years sooner, it would
yeah,
have cracked my list.
yeah,
And then the other one that's outside looking in is the Iron Man match from WrestleMania 12, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. I love that match. It's
yeah.
great. First of its kind, but just 10 ones that are better to me. Full
Yeah.
disclosure, if anybody didn't know that I was a Shawn Michaels fan before, you're really going to find
You're,
out when you listen to this episode.
well, I'm not like I'm a big Shawn Michaels fan. I love Shawn Michaels. I didn't realize how many WrestleMania matches I loved of his until I wrote this list.
Yep.
Taker's the same way. Like I knew
Yep.
Taker was a beast, but like looking at these matches, I'm kind of
Yep.
shocked myself.
Well, let's get into it, man. Let's crack the top 10 open. I'm going to throw to you first. Number 10. What is your number 10 WrestleMania match? We're counting down 10 to 1, folks. So here we
Yeah.
go.
So this one I'm pretty sure is not on your list.
Uh-oh.
And this is definitely going to be the younger side of me coming out because
That's fine.
this was like one of the first WrestleMania matches I got to see the pay-per-view of, and I loved it so much. So it's like a sentimental number 10 for me. But that is CM Punk versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 29.
Yep.
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a great match all the way through.
Yep.
I was hoping Punk would win, if I'm going to be completely honest, but I understand why. Like I wasn't mad because he didn't, because it's the Undertaker at WrestleMania prior to the streak being broken. So
Yep.
it kind of is what it is. But the match itself was amazing. It's hard for 29 because I think a lot of people look past it because it came right after the 4 great matches with Shawn and with Triple H. But really, Taker had like 5 of the greatest WrestleMania matches in a row for 5 years straight, and this is no exception.
I'm going to go
So
6 and go Edge at 24.
yeah, I forgot about that one being at 24. So like
That was the main event 24.
24 and 29, I feel like don't get remembered as well because of
Sure.
what Shawn and Triple H and Taker did. But 6 of the greatest WrestleMania matches, maybe of all time. I've got Punk Taker at number 10 for me.
Well, number 10 for me is actually one of your honorable mentions. I'm kind of surprised that it's your honorable mention. It made my list. That's the triple threat main event from WrestleMania 30. Daniel Bryan,
Yeah.
Batista, and Randy Orton.
Yeah.
I think it belongs. I think it barely squeaks in over a couple of mine. And I think exactly what you were talking about. It's not that the match was like overly amazing. It was great.
Mhm.
It really was.
Yeah.
But the moment and the story of Daniel Bryan and all that, like, I think all of that counts. And I think
Yeah.
it all just wraps into making an incredible WrestleMania match and moment. And just the anticipation that you feel in that crowd, like, is Brian, like, most of the crowd, I feel like, thought Bryan was going to win this.
Yeah.
But there were so many moments where they just got you. Like, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way. And here he comes. And here he comes. And the roof blows off the place.
You knew, like, I think everybody knew he was going to win, but you knew in the back of your mind, there's always a chance that they're not going to do it just to make everybody mad.
It's Orton and Batista.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what it is with like WWE and Randy Orton, but like if he's in a title match, it's like a 50-50 shot. I don't care. If he's in a title match with Roman Reigns right now, it's a 50-50 shot of who's going to win. And it was one of those moments, but I completely agree. Like, it was barely on the outside for me.
All right, I'll go with my number 9. We could be talking about this one a little bit later, but I'm going to go ahead and throw you. It's my number 9. I can't believe it's my number 9, actually. My number 9 is Bret the Hitman Hart versus Owen Hart from WrestleMania 10.
That is my number 9 as well.
Yeah, all right. We hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, that is my number 9.
I love that you put this match on there. And I don't say that to be like derogatory or anything like that.
Yeah,
but you being the young buck, like, man, this is one of the most underrated WrestleMania matches in history. Yeah. And it opened WrestleMania 10.
Yeah, it's amazing, the type of, like, this match that we got between Bret Hart and Owen Hart. I don't know, it was definitely like a lot of the themes for these matches, these older matches, for me, is like they're out of their time. Like, they're way before their time.
Yep.
And this was one of those of like Owen Hart's one of the few guys that if he was still around with us today and was still able to wrestle, I have no doubt that Owen Hart would be able to hold up with the guys that wrestle today. Like, I think if we think about the matches that we could have gotten with AJ Styles, with Finn Balor, with Seth Rollins, with Cody, with like all these different guys with Owen Hart, it just goes to show like these matches. And Bret Hart was before his time as well. Like, Bret Hart was a technical master at wrestling, and it was just it was a recipe for a perfect match, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing.
And you have to love that Owen won, because Owen was able to hold that over Bret's head, because Bret won the title later that night. Then they went into the feud over the summer, and it was great to have Owen be able to hold that over Bret's head. So fantastic storytelling, fantastic wrestling match. So that's both of our number 9s. I love that. All right, number 8. What you got?
So number 8 for me is actually one of your honorable mentions. Okay. And it is the opening match for WrestleMania 34, Seth, Finn, and Miz. The only reason why I have it at number 8, and this is obviously a personal, opinionated top 10 list.
Sure it is.
I really think it might be the greatest opening WrestleMania match of all time.
Better than Bret and Owen that we just talked about.
I think it's right up there with it. Like, that's why I have these two so close together.
Okay.
Is because they are so close together, in my opinion. Because when you get guys like Seth and Finn and Miz together, they're 3 different styles of wrestling, but it's so fast-paced. It's so quick, but every moment hits and makes an impact. Obviously, this is the match where Seth becomes a Grand Slam champion, which can be argued. It doesn't mean as much anymore in WWE because it seems like everybody is a Grand Slam champion, but, you know, it was an absolutely amazing match between all 3 guys. The curb stomp on the back of Miz's, like on Finn's head on Miz's back, was amazing. Yep. And so I loved every single second of this match.
The frog splash in the
out of nowhere, like the camera angle, because you were there in person, so you got to appreciate it in person.
I did.
But the way they shot it was like you just saw Miz and Finn, and all of a sudden Seth just comes out of nowhere with the frog splash.
Yep.
And it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's so good. My number 8, I'm going in the Wayback Machine. My number 8 comes from WrestleMania 6, the Ultimate Challenge, Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. And this one, much like you in WrestleMania 29, I do believe this might have been the first WrestleMania that I watched, or it was at least the first one that I gravitated to. And it was because the Ultimate Warrior won the title. So this match has all the nostalgia feels for me. I couldn't tell you how many times I've watched WrestleMania 6 over the years. And just like this being Hogan finally being dethroned, and then it not really working out for Warrior, but still, like, this match, title for title, you know, just to me it's one of the greatest, not necessarily technical masterpieces of all time. it's certainly one of the best matches that each of these guys ever wrestled.
Yeah.
So it was put together very, very well. And I think it belongs on a list.
Yep. I agree.
Number 7. What do you got for number 7?
Number 7 for me is, it may be an out there one, but I it's hard for me not to put it on there. And that is from WrestleMania 17. That is TLC 2. Because it is all the TLC matches are just amazing.
Yep.
But with Edge spearing from the top and just all the stuff that went into it, I absolutely love it. I think it's hard to pick between all the TLC matches because they're all special and different in their own way.
Yes, they
but
are.
TLC 2 to me just kind of sticks out the most. And WrestleMania 17 is one of those that is one of the best WrestleManias of all time. It's hard for me to make it number 1. I know a lot of people do, but it's up. I mean, it's definitely up there. And it's all part of it is because of TLC 2, I think. So, but I absolutely love TLC 2.
It was just outside of my honorable mentions, but I 100% see why it would belong on a list, because not only do you have this amazing match with these amazing feats, you got 3 of the best tag teams ever in this match, tearing the house down. So yeah, I completely, I get it. My number 7 is also a gimmick match, but it comes from WrestleMania 10. And that is the first ever ladder match between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon.
That's a little later on my list as well.
Okay,
yes,
we'll talk about it a little later on your list. Let's continue the Shawn Michaels fandom, because I'm going to give you number 6 on my list. My number 6 comes from WrestleMania 19. Shawn Michaels against Chris Jericho.
Yeah. It's not on my list. It is not on my list. It is not on my list. It was just on the outside. Look, the way I looked at it is, it was almost on my list. It was almost on my list. But I've got enough Shawn matches to last for a while. So I was spreading the love around a little. But I completely understand why would be on a list. Absolutely.
Shawn's first WrestleMania match back.
Yeah.
He wasn't even considered full-time at this point. This was his, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 5th match back since his back injury, and it's just phenomenal. The story behind this, I think Jericho has told this story. I think I read it in his book. As he wanted to wrestle Shawn, obviously the storyline going into it was Shawn was his childhood idol. That was real. Apparently something happened with the rehearsal. Like either somebody was late or the scheduling got jacked up, or so. I don't remember exactly what happened, but apparently Shawn and Jericho, maybe one of them had to be somewhere. I don't remember. Anyway, they met up quickly, and Shawn had Jericho had the front of the match, Shawn had the back of the match, and they just had to figure out how to tie it together. And Jericho said it literally lasted 5 minutes. We were done, and what you got was what you got. And it's one of the, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's so good. Such an amazing match. Number 6 for you. What you got?
Oh, well, kind of before we jump into number 6, I think next year around WrestleMania time, because we're not going to have enough time to do it this year. I think next year around WrestleMania time, we need to do like the 10 greatest WrestleMania Shawn Michaels matches, because I think we could easily come up with it at this point. Because my number 6 is also a Shawn Michaels match.
Ooh.
And it is from WrestleMania 21. And it is Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle. And it's hard for me not to put a Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle match on any of like the greatest wrestling matches of all time. I loved it. It's one of those of when like Shawn was really back in his groove, like really going through it. Kurt Angle is a freaking genius at wrestling as well. And it flowed so well together. So it's not one of the best Shawn Michaels WrestleMania matches, but it's like it's up there for me for sure. So I think that's why I had it at number 6.
It didn't make. Listen, full disclosure, I wrote down 1, 2, 3. I wrote down about 20 matches when I was making this list, and I wrote that match down. But the Shawn fan in me is bitter about that match because Shawn tapped. It was a great match. Don't get me wrong. But at the time, see, this was around the time Shawn, like you said, he's back in his groove. And I'm like, Shawn needs to win the title, blah, 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 blah. And Shawn's been open about saying he refused to win the title. Like they tried to put it on him several times and he refused to win it. But I don't know. The Shawn fan in me gets in the way of putting that on the list. But I agree that it's a great match. Number 5, I'm going to move away from Shawn a minute. And I don't think we're going to be talking about this one just yet because I know it's higher on your list. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what my number 5 is, though. We'll talk about it later. It's from WrestleMania 28. It's Triple H and The Undertaker. Hell in a Cell, end of an era. I know we're going to talk about that one later, but it falls at number 5 on my list.
It's a little higher for me.
Yeah, I know. All right. Give me your number 5. What you got?
Number 5 is where Shawn and Razor come in with the ladder match. Yes. WrestleMania 10. It transcends all ladder matches. Not necessarily all ladder matches, but it sets the table for all ladder matches to come in WWE. The stuff that they were doing in this match for its time was crazy. Because I don't believe that ladder was gimmicked at all. I think it was an actual steel ladder that was brutal because it didn't, like ladders today, they give a little when you get hit with them. That ladder was not given an inch to anybody. And so I loved it. The frog splash or the crossbody or whatever Shawn hit from the ladder was amazing. Like all of it was just absolutely great. So that's why it's so high on my list.
That's still one of the more iconic images in WWE history.
Yep.
Is Shawn coming off of that ladder. And fun fact, yes, that ladder was not gimmicked.
Yeah.
Also, that was the only ladder they had. There was
I was wondering why they weren't like going to get another ladder. It was just that ladder that they were using the entire time.
It's the only one they had. And it broke in the middle of the match. Because you see when Razor is climbing it at the end, how wobbly it is.
Yeah.
So when he does his victory pose at the end of the match, Earl Hebner is standing on the ladder, not just to point that Razor's the winner. He's holding the dang ladder because it's broken. Can you imagine if that thing would have actually broken, how they would have finished the match? Because Shawn couldn't hold the ladder up with Razor. I guarantee it.
No.
So, but yeah, that match transcends all ladder matches from here to eternity. I mean, you talk about the craziness. I mean, I know this is WWE and this is WrestleMania, but you go from this match to the craziness that has been the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers in AEW in ladder matches and the TLC matches that you mentioned before. The Hardys and Edge and Christian, my favorite ladder match of all time, 1999 No Mercy. They take a ladder match, put 2 more guys in it, and just raise the bar tremendously. But every ladder match ever falls back to this one, 1994 WrestleMania 10, and that's why it belongs on any list of WrestleMania matches. All right, we are about halfway through our list, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. If you are just now joining us, where the heck have you been? Man, it is WrestleMania season. We are having a blast talking all things WrestleMania, cranking out a bunch of content for you. Just letting you know, giving you insight into our thoughts, what we find most memorable about WrestleMania and why we're so dang excited about this weekend. And it's not just because we're going to be there. It's about all the moments and memories and matches that are created on the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania. Again, thank you so much for hanging out with us and listen to us blab, because that's Andy, that's what we do on this podcast. We just blab for an hour and a half, twice a week, sometimes 3 times. And if it's Mania week, like 7 times every day. So follow along with us on social media. Andy is at Andy_PBWP. I am at Chris Belcher 24. The show is at PBW Podcast. Follow us, comment, give us some feedback. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about on the podcast. We would love to make that happen for you and talk about what you want to hear about. So make sure you're following along with us. If you're watching on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel, take a moment, hit that subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. They would appreciate it. We would appreciate it. And it helps us all the way around. Make sure you're throwing some love over to Tom and the boys over at Sports Wire Radio, covering all of your wrestling and sports needs. If you don't like wrestling, I guarantee you there's a sports show there for you. If you don't like sports, there's plenty of wrestling shows there for you. So just tune in. A great 24/7 radio network online. So make sure you follow them, sportnarium.com/player. And don't forget, if you're listening on a traditional audio format, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, give us that 5-star review. Make sure you subscribe to our show so that each time a new episode drops, it comes directly to the device of your choice. We are counting down the top 10 WrestleMania matches and moments of all time. We are in the top 5, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to throw to Andy for his number 4 WrestleMania match of all time. Andy, what you got?
So number 4 may be an out there one. I'm not entirely sure because this is not the first of this kind of match. And so I think if you pick the wrong one, you're like kicked out of wrestling fandom at forever or whatever.
Uh-oh.
This could be it for me. But I'm actually picking Stone Cold versus The Rock, WrestleMania 17. I loved it. It's like the Attitude Era at its highest. It's so much fun. Like it's one of those, the first time I remember watching anything from this match was playing WWE 2K, the one that was with Austin.
Yeah. Was that
15?
14 or 15? Something like that? Yeah.
But the showcase was Stone Cold, and this was one of the matches that it was. And I loved it. Like, I loved every second of it. This is like my favorite version of The Rock. My favorite version of Stone Cold is in this match, and it's hard to beat for me. So, like, I absolutely loved every single second of it. It got me excited to see, going back and watching it, got me excited to see Stone Cold at WrestleMania this year.
Yeah.
Got me excited that maybe The Rock shows up as well. So, like, it's so much fun. But I think when you think of WrestleMania, it's hard not to think of Stone Cold versus The Rock. And so it was hard for me not to put at least one of these matches on this list.
There's a reason that it happened 3 times at WrestleMania.
Yep.
This was the only one at 17 where they went in babyface versus babyface.
Yep.
No Austin and Rock match made my list. No Austin and Rock match even got written down in my 20. So kick me out of wrestling fandom if you want to, but they're not there. I'll tell you what is my number 4, and that is the greatest triple threat match that I've ever watched in my entire life. Bar none, case closed. You can't convince me otherwise. Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chris Benoit. WrestleMania 20 main event. It is, if you want to watch the absolute definition of a triple threat match and the way, the psychology and all that, plus if you want to watch an absolute bloodbath when it didn't need to be, but it was, WrestleMania 20 is it, man. And it doesn't get talked about, and it'll never get talked about because it was Chris Benoit's crowning moment. But if I know, so for our listeners out there, there are a contingency of wrestling fans that cannot watch Chris Benoit matches. I understand that. I respect that totally. If that's you, no pressure at all. But if you can watch Chris Benoit matches like me, maybe I'm morbid, maybe I'm weird, but I can handle it. I'm fine with it. If you can handle Chris Benoit matches and you haven't watched this match in a long time, please stop what you're doing and go watch this match because it's incredible.
It is.
It's so good.
It is.
All right, Andy, let's move to number 3. This is where it's going to get interesting.
It is.
What you got?
So number 3 for me is another Stone Cold match from WrestleMania 13. Stone Cold versus Bret Hart, the double turn, all of it. I don't know if it's on your list at all or if it's any higher, but
it's one match higher, but we'll go ahead and talk about it now.
Okay.
One spot's not going to kill us because I know what your last 2 spots are.
Yes, you do.
And it's going to fall in with my other 2. So we'll just go ahead and get this discussion out of the way.
Okay.
Dude, Bret and Austin, man. Supposed to be a submission match? No. More like a no holds barred, I quit match is really what it was.
Yeah.
And it just, the double turn, this was Austin's crowning moment, even though it wasn't for a championship. And not too many guys could have put him over any better than Bret Hart did that night.
Nope.
And to know the respect that Austin has for Bret and just how well they work together, man, it's so funny to hear Austin tell the story of how he found out about this match. He was sitting on the couch when they announced the match on Raw that it was going to be a submission match. And he has said, like, why? I don't have a submission hold. I don't know why they are making this submission match. I don't have a hold. But I think it worked out pretty well for him.
It did. It did. Yeah. It's one of those of like, I don't know if we're ever going to see another like double turn like this ever again. We've seen some double turns over the years, but nothing to this level.
Right.
And it's one of those of like, I don't know if necessarily blood was needed, but blood definitely enhanced by far. Like it's we talked about it with in the Shawn Razor match of like an iconic moment of Shawn jumping off the ladder.
Yep.
Another iconic moment is Austin bleeding in the sharpshooter. Like it's one of those moments that you will never not see in any WWE video package ever.
Yep.
Is that moment, and it's the beginning of Stone Cold. It's the beginning of the character that we are like excited to see 20 something years later, 30 something years later. Like it's awesome that this is where that moment really started. And you know, props to Bret. I mean, there's only a handful of guys. Like it's weird, like looking at both of our top 10 lists. On our top 10 list, there's only like 5 or 6 names on this list.
Yeah.
And there's like 10 spots. And most like Bret Hart's on 2 of mine. Stone Cold's
Yep.
on 2 of mine. Shawn's on like 4.
Yep.
Taker's on like 4. So like it just goes to show that at WrestleMania, a lot of guys put it into a different gear. And I think this is one of those matches where that has never been more true than in this match right here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about the blood, and maybe it wasn't necessary, but daggum, this match is not what it is if you don't get that iconic shot of Austin and bleeding and the sharpshooter and it going through his teeth and all that. And we sit here and we talk about props to Austin. Listen, let's not leave out Bret in this.
No.
Because this double turn leads to some of the best work of Bret Hart's career when he is this anomaly that is a heel in America and babyface in Canada. And it just so happened that throughout that summer, they had a lot of Canada dates. So it really helped, through that whole storyline and everything. So props to Bret, man. It's amazing to think about that the Montreal screw job, the thing that sent him out of the WWF, was at the end, a screeching halt end of maybe the greatest run of his career.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Just this run post WrestleMania 13 for Bret is incredible. It's what most people remember Bret Hart, especially as a character. This is what they remember him for.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to your number 2 first, because I think I know where you're going. So let's go number 2 for you. What you got?
So this is where my cheating comes in, because
yes, I know.
Number 2 and number 1 are 2 matches lumped together because it's hard for me to separate them.
Yep.
Because I don't think we get one match without the other match taking place first. So, prefacing all of that, my number 2 is Triple H versus The Undertaker, WrestleMania 27, WrestleMania 28. 27, I think both of these matches deserve to be on a list, on the top 10 list. 28 to me is just... it's so crazy. Like, it's so crazy how many times they got me to bite on like, this is it. This is the finish. This is it. It's over. Like, going back and watching it still, I'm like, moments where I know Taker wins, and I'm like, Taker's not going to kick out. Like, he's not kicking out of the pedigree into the super kick, or the super kick into the pedigree. And so like
that moment, think about it.
Yeah.
The way that we're setting this up. Okay, spoiler alert, guys. Shawn and The Undertaker are number 1 on both of our lists. Spoiler alert, okay? So I'm kind of lumping all of this together because it makes sense.
Yeah.
The story that was told for 4 years, Shawn couldn't get it done. And then we got 27 and Triple H can't get it done. Well, now we're in 28 and Shawn is involved as a special guest referee. I know that the streak is sacred. We just talked about it last week on the show, how amazing the Undertaker's WrestleMania performances are.
Yeah.
But think about it, Andy. If you were writing a story and you could see a scenario where the super kick into the pedigree gets it done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I think if that would have been the 3 count and that would have been the end of the streak, like, it would have been received well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
It may have been sour right at the moment, But after the match, they'll get up, they'll hug, it'll be all goody goody. They'll walk out together. Okay, that is a satisfying end to everybody's career, Triple H included. That's
Yeah.
a satisfying end. Let's close the book. We're done. Man, the story would have been fantastic, but it didn't end there. The super kick into the pedigree could not keep the Undertaker down.
No, and like it's one of those of honestly was telling a story from WrestleMania 25 until WrestleMania 28 of
Yeah.
Shawn was willing to do whatever it took to beat Taker.
Yep.
Never get it done. Literally, the story of Triple H and Undertaker was Triple H saying, "I'm going to do what Shawn couldn't do, and I'm going to do everything it takes to put you down." So, like WrestleMania 27 was it a no DQ match or no holds barred match or something like that, leading into WrestleMania 28, the Hell in a Cell match, and it's one of those things of like I go back and watch it, I still get goosebumps. I still get like overwhelmed watching it because it is three of the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
In one match together out of a 4-year story. I think it was Taker talking about it in the Last Ride documentary, possibly, or it may have been some other way. But he said it's never been done before. Like it's never been a 4-year WrestleMania storyline, and that's what Shawn and Triple H and Taker were of a 4-year WrestleMania story coming together to the point where the closing shot of all three of them at the top of the ramp was not supposed to happen. Like that was Undertaker called it in the ring of like we're doing this. Like we're breaking character. We're going up top. We're gonna hug it out because it is the end of an era. It was the end of an era. It was the last I can remember chair shot to the head. I think was 27 was WrestleMania 27, and then WrestleMania 28 was all the the craziness that we got. And it was just to me it was a perfect WrestleMania story from Shawn Taker to Triple H Taker, and it was hard. I think it was going to be hard to beat what Shawn and Taker did, and I don't think Triple H and Taker beat it, but I think they actually, in a weird way, enhanced what Shawn and Taker did at WrestleMania 25 and 26 through what Triple H and Taker did at 27 and 28.
Oh yeah, I completely agree, and I think the only reason that you put Shawn and Taker above Triple H and Taker is just because Shawn's a better in-ring performer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what separates it. And full disclosure, Triple H and Taker were a little bit lower on my list, but for other reasons. Like,
right.
I think when you get down to the top 5 WrestleMania matches, it's a matter of preference at that point. Yeah. Like, you can't sit and say any match on any top 5 WrestleMania list. There's no way you could criticize it and say that doesn't belong. Right. Because any list is going to have a couple of these matches on it. Like there are many lists out there that would say Bret Hart and Austin is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. It's hard to argue.
Yeah.
Again, it's down to preferences. And for me, if I have to rate them separately, 26, Shawn and Taker comes in at number 2. And then 25, the perfect wrestling match, Shawn and Taker comes in at number 1. It just, there's something about the visual of Shawn Michaels kicking out of the tombstone and the look on the Undertaker's face. Yeah. That like it just reels everybody in.
Yeah.
And you knew that watching that match, Shawn wasn't going to win. You certainly knew going into 26 that he wasn't going to win. But man, there were a couple times when you're like, oh, is he gonna, and he never did. I remember watching 25 live and 26 live for that matter. Yeah. But man, I think it's, to me, nothing will ever beat Shawn and Taker at 25. I think it's the perfect wrestling match.
Yeah, if I had to break these 4 up into separate positions or spots, and this may be where we differ on this a little. I would have Triple H Taker at 27, number 4. I would probably have Shawn Taker 26 at number 3, Hell in a Cell at 2, and then WrestleMania 25 at 1. Because 25 is just a ridiculous match, and like on itself. It's one of those of I think we all knew that Taker and Shawn had amazing chemistry in the ring together.
Yep.
And when it's at WrestleMania, it's going to be that times 1,000, and that's what this was. It was always going to be impossible for 26 to be better than 25, in my opinion.
Yes.
but they got close. Like 26, they got real close to being just as good and almost a little better at times.
I said it on one of our recent episodes. I can't remember exactly which one it was. Full disclosure, we've recorded a lot of these out of order, so I don't remember exactly what I said when I said it. But the only reason that I think I said on the Undertaker episode, actually, the only reason, like you just said, that 26 is not the best match of all time is because 25 happened.
Yeah.
Same, and I compared that to Shawn and Razor, the two ladder matches.
Yeah.
The only reason that SummerSlam 95 is not the best ladder match of all time is because WrestleMania 10 happened.
Yeah.
So that's a good problem to have. All right. They tried their best to duplicate it and they got so stinking close. But man, it just, I'm glad that we're on the same page. That just goes to show you people that are listening or watching that sometimes Andy and I have a differing opinion of what we like, what we don't like. But when good wrestling is good wrestling, it's really hard to ignore it. And it's really hard not to have the same stuff like right at the top.
And I think it's to me like these these 4 matches, I guess, is much more than just wrestling. It's like it's wrestling and storytelling at its finest and at its best. And I don't know if anything will ever beat the stories between these 4 matches and the matches themselves at times. Because I mean, if you look at it, kind of like what we talked about, like the greatest wrestling match of all time, preference obviously, like preference wise, the greatest wrestling match of all time, Shawn Taker 25, the greatest ladder match of all time happened at WrestleMania 10. My opinion, the greatest Hell in a Cell match of all time, WrestleMania 28, like greatest submission match at WrestleMania 13. So there's a lot of moments at WrestleMania that I think WrestleMania amplifies them more.
Sure does.
But that's because the performers and the wrestlers know how big WrestleMania is, and they don't pull their punches at all at WrestleMania. I mean, I think back to the pandemic era WrestleMania in front of nobody. The triple threat ladder match was not supposed to be good because it was not in front of anybody, and it was awesome. Like, it was amazing to go back and go and watch that one. And so like there are matches at more crazier than that, like WrestleMania 34. I think it was WrestleMania 34. Kurt and Ronda versus Triple H and Stephanie had no reason to be good at all, and it was fun. Like I enjoyed it. I loved it. The pop that Ronda gets when she's punching Triple H in the corner is crazy. WrestleMania 31, the cash in, the greatest cash in of all time. I had such a hard time not putting that on my list because I'm basically what you are to Shawn, I am to Seth. Like I love anything bad Seth Rollins does is still better than what most people do. So that's my opinion on that. But WrestleMania is just, it's something bigger than everybody else, and these matches prove it and show it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a great note to end on, but I'm going to tag back to what I meant to say a minute ago, and I forgot to include it. And you were talking about the chemistry with Shawn and the Undertaker, and everybody knew they were going to put on great matches. Guess what, Andy? I can count on less than 2 hands how many times those guys actually had matches.
Oh, yeah.
Because they wrestled In Your House Ground Zero, September 97, Hell in a Cell, October 97, Royal Rumble 1998, where Shawn breaks his back.
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't wrestle another singles match until WrestleMania 25 and then 26. So I can count them on one hand.
Yeah.
How many now those guys wrestled in tag matches. They wrestled on shows. They did stuff like that. But as far as one-on-one singles matches, they had 5, ladies and germs. 5.
Well, I think if you look back at our list, for my list at least, aside from Stone Cold and The Rock, and maybe Shawn and Razor, because I don't know how many matches they had together. I'm sure they had quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
But like a lot of these guys didn't have a whole lot of matches together.
Right.
I mean, Shawn and Angle to my knowledge, didn't have a bunch of matches together.
Yeah, their feud extended past WrestleMania, but I think they might have had 3 more matches after that.
That's like Punk and Taker didn't have a lot of matches together that I can remember. Bret Hart and Owen Hart didn't have a whole lot of matches together in WWF, WWE. TLC 2, I know it happened a lot, but like at a TLC match, it's hard to kind of repeat what they did. So like I think that's what's so fun about WrestleMania is when you get guys that necessarily we don't see a lot. I mean, this year, Edge and AJ Styles, it was hard for me not to put that in my honorable mentions, and it hadn't even happened yet because I know it's going to be like a top 15 of all time match, if not top 10, because we've never seen it, and so
we'll probably never see it
again. No, if Seth and Edge happened at WrestleMania instead of SummerSlam, that match would be on my list because we've never seen it before. We'll probably never see it again, and so it's. To me, WrestleMania is those special moments when you get matches like some of these on our list and the match that we're going to get at WrestleMania this year of we're not supposed to get this match, but we're getting it and it's going to be amazing.
Yep, absolutely. So that's what you can expect from WrestleMania. If you are a casual fan or you're just dipping your toe back in after a long, hey, I haven't watched since the Attitude Era, man, you missed a lot. This list, go back in this episode, check out, this stuff that's on this list. Is we don't have a lot of stuff that's new, but we definitely have a lot of stuff that is worth your time, especially if you haven't gone back and watched in a long time. So as you gear up for WrestleMania this week, make sure that you go check out these matches. I know when Andy and I get to the hotel room in Dallas, we're not going to be spending a lot of time there, but I can just about guarantee you that most of these matches will be on the television while we're in our hotel room.
Yes.
We're, again, not going to spend a lot of time there, but while we're there, the right things are going to be on TV. So it's WrestleMania week. Looking forward to Saturday and Sunday. Hope you guys are as well. A lot of great things in the pipeline coming up this week. I know we've already talked about the Undertaker. We've already, again, we recorded all these out of order. I don't really remember. I think we have already fantasy booked WrestleMania. We're going to preview WrestleMania this week, WrestleMania 2022. We are going to do a watch along. That's what I want to plug. Mr. Jared Justice is going to hop back on, and we're going to watch a couple of these matches with you guys. So we'll give you timestamps, and we're going to watch the match together, give you our thoughts in real time. We are going to talk about, you're going to hear some amazing stories from myself and from Jared as we talk about our in-person experiences at WrestleMania 34 and 35. Andy kind of interviewed us in that show, and Andy, that was a lot of fun. And the sentiment coming out of that is we can't wait for you to experience your first WrestleMania. So that being said, that episode is going to be coming after WrestleMania. Andy and I are just going to go off the cuff, probably record in the car actually, because we got a long road trip, just talking about what's happening and just stuff that you're not going to get to see on your television screen. Andy, WrestleMania season is busy. It requires us to crank out a lot of content, but there's nothing like it.
There's nothing like it. And I got to thinking about it a couple days ago. I've been to Survivor Series. I'm going to WrestleMania this year. Spoiler alert, SummerSlam is in our backyard this year, so we're more than likely going to SummerSlam. We'll be there. All I'm missing is the Rumble and the big four out of the way, and the Rumble is my favorite one, so I think I'm saving the best one for last, but I don't know. WrestleMania is going to be hard to beat. It's one of those of all the people I've talked to that have said, doesn't matter what's on the card, just the atmosphere is amazing. Just being in the atmosphere makes it better than watching it at home. So I'm very, very excited for it.
It absolutely is. So again, as I'm going to say on a future episode that you haven't heard yet, as a wrestling fan, if you have never been to WrestleMania, you need to carve it out one year, save your money, and go. It's not as expensive as you think it is. I promise. You just need to go. You need to plan it. You need to go because it is something every single wrestling fan. I'll say this, no matter if you're an AEW fan and you're not necessarily a big WWE fan, it is something every single wrestling fan needs to experience in person at least once. Guess what? WrestleMania is in a stadium every single year. There's about at least 80,000 seats every year. You can get one, I promise. Okay? Don't worry about that. Get one and get to WrestleMania. All right. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us. Again, make sure you are subscribing to us wherever you find your podcast. Make sure you're subscribing on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel. Make sure you're following us on social media at PBW Podcast. We drop shows every Monday and Wednesday, sometimes Thursday, sometimes every day of the week. That's why you need to subscribe. That's why you need to make sure that you're supporting the show and following us so that every time we drop a new episode, boom, it just comes right to the device of your choice. That's the easiest way to support the show. We appreciate that very much. For Mr. Andy York, my name is Chris Belcher. Thank you for hanging out with us during WrestleMania week. here on the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. We will catch you guys down the road.